Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Career Insight with Meet the Zookeeper. I'm pleased to welcome Chris Eley, Wildlife Park, which I believe is where CBBC 1 Zoo 3 is filmed. So if you watch CBBC, you may well have seen Chris on there. Also joining Kingsbury Green today are Wellington Academy and also Lawn Manor. So welcome, everybody. And over to you, Chris.
Hi everyone. This is so cool that we can reach out to you guys. I know that we're you guys are quite a distance away from us here at Paradise Wildlife Park, but I thought I'd introduce myself. So my name's Chris Eley. I am a bird keeper and also head of education here at Paradise Wildlife Park. So my role is educating all of our visitors about how amazing our animals are, but working with some of the most amazing and incredible birds on the planet. I have worked across other sections as well, and I've been a zookeeper for roughly about 2 years because my career's been quite interesting, and we'll probably dive into that when we do some questions. But yeah, I took a big career change to come and work with animals. So I'm at Paradise Wildlife Park, which is an amazing zoo in Hertfordshire. And we have a range of animals. We're very much big cat specialists here. So we work with a lot of big cats. We've got Amur tigers, snow leopards, jaguars, and African lions as well. And we have a sister site down in Kent called the Big Cat Sanctuary, which again has lots of big cats. But we also have some really interesting animals, like we have the largest snake you can see anywhere in the UK. We have a green anaconda called Optimus Prime, who lives here at the park. We have red pandas, meerkats, otters, sun bears, camels, zebras, a real range of species, and we do everything for conservation. So conservation is really important, making sure that we can tell people how important animals are, and we have animals here that are on breeding programs, so hopefully that could be potentially in the future reintroduced back out into the wild, which is really exciting. And then we work with lots of people across the world funding long-term conservation projects like the Snow Leopard Trust and the Red Panda Network, where we get to work with some amazing organisations who are in the field saving wildlife out in the wild as well. So I think I've got the best job in the world. Maybe after your questions you might disagree or agree, but I'm happy to field any questions that you have about what it's like to be a zookeeper, what's the good things, what's the bad things, but I'm here really to answer any of your questions. So I do have some pictures to share that might help me answer some of those questions for you as well. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have this morning. And I'm excited to hear what questions you have for me, really.
Okay, we've got a couple of students asking questions from Kingsbury Green, and I'll also be asking a question from Wellington Academy in a moment. So Kingsbury Green.
What's your favourite animal to work with?
Did you catch that? What's your favourite animal to work with?
Well, this is where I'm going to share my screen with you, because I'm going to bring up some. Can you guys see this? Can everyone see this? Yeah, has it come up?
Yeah, that's come up.
Okay, right. So I'm going to scan through and show you my favourite animal to work with. Hang on 2 seconds. So this here is my favourite animal to work with. This is Darwin. Now Darwin's a black hornbill, and the brilliant thing that I've done with Darwin is I'm not sure if any of you watched Sir David Attenborough's Planet Earth last night, Planet Earth 3, because they focused on hornbills, and Darwin is an Asian black hornbill. Now he's really important because there aren't many Asian black hornbills in zoos across Europe as part of the breeding program, and Darwin and his partner Mulu, they are super important to the breeding program. Now I've worked with Darwin. I'm what we call his primary trainer, so I work with him. Darwin, when I first started working with him, wouldn't come anywhere near me. He was very nervous bird, but I've worked with him, and this is why he's my favourite bird, because we've got this really positive relationship between zookeeper and bird. And yeah, this is Darwin here, and Darwin now will come to a set of scales, so we can weigh him to see how healthy he is. We can he'll follow me around the aviary to make sure, so if we need to do some work in the aviary, we can make sure he goes into his house nice and safely, so we can do some reperching and sort out his aviary for him. But he's an extra special bird, and although hornbills, people think they look a bit interesting looking, they look a little bit like dinosaurs, and they have that incredible casque on top of their head as well, which is really important for kind of amplifying their sound in the rainforest. They are amazing birds to work with, and I'm very lucky to work with Darwin and the hornbills, because hornbills are under real threat in places like Borneo, where they live out in the wild, where lots of rainforest is being torn down, and we know a lot about what's going on with orangutans out there, but it does have an impact on birds like hornbills. And so Darwin is definitely my favorite animal. Although if you speak to zookeepers, we do say that we will never really tell you our favorite animals, because it's important not to have favorites. But I'm going to tell you today, he certainly is my favorite. Yeah.
Fantastic, Chris. This is a question from Caden at Wellington Academy, and he asks, what qualifications do you need to become a zookeeper?
Yes. Okay. And I also see that there's a question underneath that about what was my first job. So here we go. This is what I'm going to tell you. So this is probably a bit of an interesting story, and I'll link this into qualifications as well. But I was a assistant head teacher, director of sixth form in a secondary school, just like probably one of the secondary schools that you are sat in right now. I worked as a teacher for about 11 years. And then I went and took an exciting role working for, I'm not sure if anyone watched Dragon's Den, but I went and worked for Peter Jones from Dragon's Den for 2.5 years, and I ran his education charity called the Peter Jones Foundation. But during lockdown, like most people did, I decided that I actually wanted a complete career change. And I think this is really important, that, you know, one thing I've always thought is, actually, have I got the ability to change my career and do something that I'm really passionate about? And I've always been passionate about teaching and educating people, but I thought I could use my experiences to talk about how amazing some of our wildlife is, and also be a zookeeper at the same time. So not only do I get to work with Darwin, but I get to work with educationally with a lot of our birds. So this is Scally, one of our owls. So I do our bird shows, and I fly a lot of our birds of prey, and I get to educate people about that. So my career actually in zookeeping has only been the last 2 years. Now that kind of poses the question, what are the qualifications that you need? Well, there are a couple of different routes into zookeeping, but I'm going to give you a few tips if you're very interested in becoming a zookeeper. So the first one is experience is really important. So volunteering. So while I was working for Peter Jones, on a weekend, I'd actually go and volunteer at a different local zoo, and I'd work with species like lemurs and aardvarks and all different sorts of interesting animals. But I got volunteer experience. Now that's very important, because it's super competitive to become a zookeeper. Lots of people want to do it, and there are only a certain amount of zoos, obviously, across the UK that you can work in. So the first thing is get experience. Now that might even be in some like kennels and catteries. That's really good animal experience. So it doesn't have to be necessarily volunteer experience in a zoo to start off with, because you have to be, in most zoos, 16, 17, 18 before you can be a volunteer. But in some kennels and catteries, you can do that a little bit younger age. So we say experience with animals is really super important. And then there's 2 routes to go in. You could go in as a trainee or an apprentice keeper. You might need a qualification for that in animal management. So when you get to sixth form age, so like getting an animal management qualification would be really good. And then trying to get a trainee or apprentice zookeeper role or an internship would be really useful. Also, the other way to go is you can go through sixth form and then through to university, do something like a zoology or a conservation degree, and then you'll have some of that experience. Now, the zookeeping world also has its own qualification, and that's called the Diploma of the Management of Zoo, Animals and Aquariums. It's called the DIMSA. So I do the DIMSA qualification as I've transferred into my new career, and it's a really good qualification that you can do on the job. So if you're a trainee keeper, you can sign up to do the DIMSA course, and it takes 2 years to do, and that gives you all the foundations you need to be a zookeeper. But the big thing is experience working with the animals, because that is super important. Zoos want people who are confident around animals, understand animals, and have had some experience of working with them. So that's really, really important as well. And one other thing I would say is that also thinking about the wider world of conservation and animals, so thinking about the amazing conservation work that you could do across the world as well, doing some volunteering abroad would be absolutely incredible. And I'm actually going to skip onto an image that to show you something. So bear with me as I kind of skip through this. We've got super cute penguins, tapirs, barn owls. Here's me doing some work. Right, okay, this is it here. So I do some voluntary work with an amazing organisation out in South Africa called Volpro. Now, Volpro, they do a lot of work with vultures. So vultures are actually really threatened out in Africa at the moment. But what I do is I go out and I help out every year, and I fly out to South Africa and have this opportunity to work with these incredible birds. 5 out of the 8 species of vulture that you can find in Africa are actually critically endangered, and some we might not see on the planet in the next 5 years. They're super important for cleaning up carcasses across the planet and stopping disease spread. So what I do is I go out and work with Volpro in their rehabilitation centre. And I've been very lucky because I've actually had the opportunity to release vultures back out into the wild and do some incredible work as a person from Paradise Wildlife Park to go out and donate some money to Volpro and the amazing work that they do. But I would say volunteering out abroad, if you can, that is another excellent opportunity and a chance to get involved even further in conservation outside of the realms of the zoo. I hope that answered people's questions. Sorry.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks, Chris. I've got another couple of questions from Kingsbury Green.
Yep.
And my question is, how much birds are there left?
So we've got a student who was originally has come in from South Africa.
Oh,
She's
wow.
wanting to know what about the vultures. How many? Do you know sort of numbers of how many vultures are still left?
Yeah, so we're down to literally a couple of thousand of certain species. So there's a little vulture called the hooded vulture. There's only about in the thousands of those left. They think that the bird could go extinct in the next 5 years. A lot of that is to do. A lot of the big problem with vultures at the moment in places like South Africa is actually to do with poaching. And what happens is if someone goes to poach a rhino or an elephant, the first thing that will tell the anti-poaching teams, the people who are trying to stop the poachers, that something's been killed is the vultures circling above. What those poachers do is they lace that elephant or rhino carcass with poison. And that means that when the vultures come down and start to feed on the carcass, it kills them all off, which is super, super sad. And there have been cases where about 100 vultures have died from carcass poisoning in one carcass. Well, if you think that there's only 1,000 of a certain species of vulture left in the wild, that is, you know, super terrifying to think. Actually, if we keep on losing vultures at this rate, it's going to be a real challenge. Yeah.
Okay, there was one question from Edward at Wellington Academy, just going totally off the bird sitch, but how do you transport snakes?
How do we transport snakes? Very interesting, because I am actually part of what we call our big snake restraint team. So we have got some reticulated pythons here that are over 16 feet long, and Optimus Prime, who's our green anaconda, she weighs over 120 kilograms, which is getting up towards the weight of some of our lions that we have here at the park. They're pretty interesting animals because they only eat once a year in the wild, something as big as a capybara or a tapir. But to transport them is very difficult. But you need a big team. So when we've recently had to medicate one of our snakes, and we had to give it injections every 3 days, and it took 7 of us, 7 keepers, to be able to restrain that snake, to be able to inject it with the medicine that it needed. That's how powerful they are. So when you transport them, with the bigger snakes, it's a little bit easier if you've got a big team. The ones you have to be careful of are obviously our venomous snakes. But a lot of our venomous snakes, we've actually trained them to go into boxes. So they've been trained our venomous snakes to go into boxes, and then we can slide the shutter and then move them nice and easily. We actually do a lot of training with a lot of our animals to help them to, so box training and crate training with lots of our animals if they do need to move on to another collection, or if we did need to take them to the vets for some reason.
Fantastic. Another question from Kingsbury Green.
How many types of birds do you have?
How many types of birds have you got at Paradise Wildlife?
At Paradise, so we have got at Paradise Wildlife Park, we've probably got 12 or 13 different species of birds of prey. So anything from barn owls to big eagle owls to falcons, kestrels. We have a very cheeky bird called Bombora, who's our laughing kookaburra, who I fly in our displays, who always likes to embarrass me in front of the public. The other day, he somehow flew on top of my head, which he's not meant to do. But that is, he's pretty cheeky, is Bombora. We've also got a little burrowing owl called Button. But then we have our colony of African penguins as well. So we've got 19 penguins. We are actually, it's a very exciting time at the park here because we've actually had a number of penguin chicks that have been born over the last week or so. And that is, yeah, like that's amazing to be able to be part of those amazing breeding programs. So African penguins are endangered out in the wild. So they have a breeding program in zoos to make sure that we have lots of, be able to kind of sustain the population of African penguins because they have lots of threats, and it's we're really lucky to have had some of those. We've got African penguins, we have emus, and we also have our amazing black hornbills as well. And we are going through some big changes at the park where we're building lots of new habitats, so we're actually hoping that we're going to have some brand new birds coming very, very soon. Yeah. Oh, I've seen some more questions in the chat, so more than happy to answer those. Out of 10, how would you rate being a zookeeper? Look, I never ever have what I call the Sunday dread. So I never sit there on a Sunday and go, I'm not looking forward to going into work today. I always come into work with a spring in my step. Now, there are obviously things you need to know about being a zookeeper. It's not the best paid job in the world, but in regards to how rewarding it is, it's absolutely incredible. So I get to these excellent opportunities to go out across the world. I also went to the Philippines to do work with hornbills out in the wild. And I get to work with some amazing animals every single day. And that is really, really cool. It all depends as well. Others could, so what sections you work on. So I work on the bird section. I absolutely love birds. Now, bird section, you have to be, it's all about training the birds. And I'll answer that other question, how do you train the birds, in a short minute. But working with birds is absolutely incredible for me, but some people like the bigger animals like camels and the tapirs that you saw me with in one of the pictures, and that is you know, that's a much more heavy lifting. Your 90% of your job is going to be cleaning up camel and tapir poo, and you know, it's very hard work, physically really active. Whereas birds and some other of the animals, like our big cats, you have to be a lot more thoughtful about kind of how you're acting with those birds, with those animals, sorry. And then when someone asked about training the birds, I'll scan through because this is some of the other work that I do here. But let's talk about training the birds. So so this is Scally, who's one of our one of our owls. Now, we use something called positive reinforcement training with all of our birds. So we make sure that we always have something positive with them. All of our birds fly daily. So we open up the door of their aviary and we'll fly them around, letting them show some of their natural behaviors. And there's nothing more natural than being able to fly. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have been to like a falconry display before, but one thing that you'll see that's missing from Scally, our owl, is sometimes at falconry displays, they have like leather straps hanging off their feet. We don't use leather straps or anything like that when we fly our birds. Everything's done through positive reinforcement. So we get the birds to fly to us and then they receive a reward like some food. When you saw me with the pictures with Darwin the black hornbill, I'll point to a spot, he comes to it and then he gets a reward. So it's all to do with positive reinforcement. And that's why we fly our birds daily, why we really enjoy training and flying our birds. But we're not the only section on the zoo that zookeepers that train our animals. Our lions, our tigers, our jaguars and our snow leopards are all whistle trained. So that's really important, because if they need to see the vet or the vet needs to check them out, we don't necessarily want them to be anaesthetized through a dart gun lots and lots of times. So what we've done is work with our big cats when they know they get a positive reward of some meat when they come to the fence with, of their habitat with on a whistle. And that means that the vets can check them over and make sure they're nice and healthy without actually having to anaesthetize them. Because when you anaesthetize an animal, you've got about 15 minutes before they go to sleep. And in that 15 minutes, they could be quite stressed, maybe injure themselves. So everything that we do is through training, positive reinforcement, and making sure we're doing the best for the animals that we care for. And that's super important. So hopefully I've answered those two questions there as well.
Lovely. I think we've got time just for 2 more questions. I've got a couple from Kingsbury Green.
Yeah, no worries.
What's the most exotic animal you've ever been with?
Oh, the most exotic animal. Oh, that is an interesting one. In regards to working with, so I actually think when we talk about maybe not exotic, but I would say I would rate that as like the most endangered. Now we've got some gibbons here at Paradise Wildlife Park that are critically endangered out in the wild, and they are super, super important animals that we have. They're called northern white-cheeked gibbons, and in fact, we have the oldest gibbon in captivity here, and we believe that she was part of what we call the international pet trade. Her name is Newt, and she's 49 years old. Now, the other gibbons in the breeding program, the next oldest is 33 years old. So Newt is very, very much an old lady, but she's really important for us. And when we talk about exotic animals, let's talk more about endangered animals. And she is an incredible endangered species. And those gibbons are really super, super important to us because they are so close to extinction in the wild, and we're doing our best to try to save them with the organisations that we work with. Hopefully that might answer your question.
I think we could probably sit here and talk to you all day, Chris, but I've got one last question before we sort of have to wrap up this.
Not a problem at all. Yeah, no worries.
So, yeah, what made you choose your job?
What made me choose my job? Look, I think like lots of people I've always been passionate about animals, and I've been very lucky to go around and see animals out in the wild, and birds in particular are a huge passion of mine, vultures and hornbills in particular. And I think I got to a certain point where I'd really enjoyed what I'd done as a teacher and working with Peter Jones from Dragon's Den. I really loved it, but I got to a point where I was like, I really want to change my career, and I really feel like now is the time where I could really enjoy working with birds and educating people just about all the amazing animals we have on the planet. So I think if you're going to take one thing away from today, I'd probably say whatever you guys decide to do, whether it isn't going into zookeeping or it isn't, always do something that you're really, really passionate about and that you want to do. You spend so much of your working life, so much of your life working, that is so important that you do something that you're really super passionate about. And for me, that's teaching people about how incredible birds are and getting to work and train with some of our incredible birds here at Paradise Wildlife Park.
Okay, and just one last question from Mrs. Young. Do you do zoo encounters where students can come along and sort of get a hands-on experience of being a zookeeper? at Paradise?
Yes, we do. So we have junior zookeeper, mini zookeeper, shadow zookeeper experiences. Obviously you have to be certain ages to do certain experiences, but we do big cat feeds, we do feeding red pandas, we do feed the penguins, we do sloth experiences. So there is an opportunity to come and learn what it takes to become a zookeeper, which is really important, which is really important as well. So yeah, we do some incredible experiences here. And if you want to learn more, actually, and although it is a CBBC TV series and might you can still learn quite a lot from it, is obviously it was mentioned that we have a TV series called 1 Zoo 3 that's filmed live here at the park. It's coming into series 4 and 5 now, and the 3 brothers who run the park, they are jet setting across the world to conservation projects, to other zoos like San Diego Zoo out in America, and talking about how important it is to how important zoos are to conservation, which is really important as well.
Thanks, Chris. That's amazing. I'm just going to put it out there. Do Wellington Academy and Lawn Manor have any questions before we close this insight? No, they're not typing anything.
Oh,
hold on. We've got a question coming in.
All good.
Oh, lovely. Well, I think on behalf of everybody at Wellington, Lawn Manor and Kingsbury Green, we'd like to give you a huge thank you and a round of applause.
Thanks, guys. It's a real pleasure speaking, man. Hopefully, we might even see some of you working in zoos in future years as well. So, but thanks so much for listening, and yeah, I hope you have a great rest of the day.